Hello and welcome to another episode of Mystique Femininity, the sanctuary where your inner essence, your sacred truth, and your embodied beauty are all welcome. I'm so honored to be here today. Today's episode is probably going to stretch you. It probably will aggravate you to a bit and irritate those things that are lurking under the surface. Because we're going to talk about a version of femininity that is extremely trendy. You can go onto Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and find this particular type of feminine expression. And that is the dark feminine. Maybe you've heard of her. You've seen her. She's sensual. She's sharp. She's seductive. She doesn't chase, and she gets what she wants. She's resting in her villain era, or potentially her Disney princess and villain era. She burns bridges and calls it boundaries. She doesn't explain, she doesn't apologize or soften. She sounds powerful, right? But here's the truth. That is not power. That is pain in disguise. It is the unhealed version of the feminine, which you do not have to remain in order to flourish. And I want to help you understand the difference. Now, part one, the allure of the dark feminine, but why this is just a reaction. The reason why the dark feminine feels so intoxicating is because she feels like a response of years of shrinking yourself, suppression, people pleasing, and performing for approval. If you've ever been told to tone it down, you felt unsafe to express your desires or anger. Being overlooked for your softness because of your softness, or just simply exhausted trying to earn love, then yes, stepping into the other side of this feminine type might feel like liberation. It may feel like you have finally arrived and that you are a savage. But what's really happening is that you're swinging from one extreme to the next. So you are going from over giving to being over controlling, from being too nice to being performatively bad. But here's the thing, neither extreme is you. I think of a table. When a table is balanced, it can sustain a significant amount of weight. You can do a lot of things on a table that's balanced. And a table typically has 4 legs. Well, when you begin to have it to become unbalanced, you are not able to assert as much weight, nor are you able to do as much on it. You may be able to, prop it up a little bit, put a little piece of wood underneath the uneven leg, and maybe you just use it for decor. So that's all it's good for. You can no longer use it to its full functionality. This is what happens, my loves, when you operate under extremes. And essentially, you are rejecting your true nature to be in one of these extremes. They're both masked. One is the wounded girl trying to be liked, and the other is the wounded woman trying not to give a fuck. Now, the shadow isn't the destination, it is a doorway. Let's go a little deeper. The dark feminine, as it's marketed today, is often ego dressed in velvet, in dark lipstick, and vampy perfume. It is projection, it is defense and armor. But the true shadow of the feminine isn't evil. It's just unintegrated. And when I say shadow, I'm not talking about demonizing your rage, your hunger, or your sexuality, because we don't do that on this podcast. I'm always advocating for you to tap into all of those areas. So it's not that at all. But what I'm talking about when it comes to the shadow, it's about what happens when you don't metabolize those integrations, when you use them to dominate versus using it to discern. So think about it. Is withholding affection really power? Is isolating yourself really peace? Is making others feel small a sign of high standards? We see this often in the soft life aesthetic. Oh, you're not wearing designer? You don't have a Birkin? Oh, ew, you shop at Burlington. That sort of energy. Instead of using your power to be discerning and to provide back to the world and the universe, you look down. That is not it. That is the ego. And that often is the ego protecting your pain because the ego wants to be correct and it will do whatever it needs to remain such. So whatever you think is true. And your ego will do its job by trying to isolate and insulate you into that same thought stream. This is why it takes time to really integrate and cultivate yourself and develop yourself in a way that may be different than from what you're currently experiencing. It is not easy, but it is what is necessary in order to have ascension in this reality and in order for you to really experience the pure bliss of being in your feminine in this lifetime. You chose to be here in a feminine way. And often many women do not get the opportunity to endeavor in it and really explore and enjoy it. And as you age, you will begin to have such frustrations with your body, which is just the tip of the iceberg. But really, the frustration is in the fact that you've not integrated all your parts. And now you are being demanded to do so, basically almost against your will, because you would prefer to keep it the way you're going. You know, if you work in a male dominant industry, it's more foreseeable or more desirable for you to remain in the leaning into the masculine and essentially opting out of your feminine. Even though you may be in a feminine body, you are not living in a feminine way. And yes, I know that the femininity can be in a boundless expressions, but when it is divorced from your innate nature, that is essentially opting out of such. The performance of trying to control how you're perceived. So in the dark feminine, she's very lusty, very vampy. I get what I want. I come first and you don't. I will, give you the most amazing sexual performance and then leave you on red. All of that is a performance because you are trying to control how you're perceived by the male gaze and also everyone else's gaze because you don't want to be messed with. You are dark feminine. And what's really wild is that somehow we have spiritualized this. We've marketed it and branded it. But none of this makes you whole. And if anything, it just puts a veneer of power over very feeble, broken, wounded, infected energy. And as we know that in order for things to heal, we must cleanse them. And the cleansing process may not feel comfortable, but in order to preserve the whole, we sometimes have to endure a bit of discomfort in order for us to bloom. Now, what your soul is actually craving. So we've talked about what the dark feminine is and why it's not what we really want. Your soul is craving not to be dark. You're craving to feel safe in your power, to say no without guilt, to walk away without a performance, to embody beauty, grace, strength, and sovereignty all at once with reckless abandon, if I will. The true feminine, the divine feminine, isn't soft life or boss babe. You see what I mean? These are two extremes. I either need to be the boss babe who's starting multiple businesses and takes no slack and works hard, works 7 days a week. I work Monday through Friday, then Friday through Saturday, Sunday, no days off. That's the boss babe versus a soft life, which is essentially I don't work. I only care about the frivolous, nothing more. And I really don't have any thoughts. I may be potentially doting on my partner, but at the end of the day, that's it. I'm just a Pilates princess. That's it. And neither of those things need to be in polar opposites. They can coexist very well together. And that is what you are needing. In this path of femininity and as you evolve in your feminine form, there is a different path, and that is the mystical path. This is the integration of the sacred reciprocity and receptiveness, but also the intuitive power. She doesn't need to demand, she commands with her presence. Her magnetism is not in her outfit or her attitude. It is in her energy. The way she sees, the way she listens, the way she walks away from what isn't hers and what no longer serves her. But she does this with grace, not vengeance. When you are very much in your power, you are. It just is. I have encountered many women in my years, and for the most part, many I feel often were cosplaying a role. It's what society has deemed acceptable for them, and this can come up from a multitude of reasons. It could be from upbringing that, this is just what women need to be or what women should not be. It could be that they're rebelling against those areas, but it also can be the things that are much more innocuous and the absorbed messaging from society that makes a woman behave in a certain way. It also could be because of just past life experiences. If a woman potentially may have experienced a lot of hardship growing up, not being catered to, not being doted on, and she's found herself to be able to attract a certain type of man, then in her mind, it's okay, I'm pretty and I get nice things. And so I just want to stay in that realm. But then on the other side of the token, there is those that may have been doted on a lot growing up, but they were not able to be free. They were always having to be on and had to be on in a certain way. And so for some, they may become very hardcore in this energy because they want to have their freedom. And then there are some who have experienced really just unfortunate trauma in the physical sense. And this also can make her become very dark, especially if this happened at a young age. It can make a girl's experience as she's growing up and developing, it will make her transform into something that is not what she truly is, but it is her way of protecting herself. So when I'm saying these things today, I don't want anyone to take away that these are negative things against you. You simply are reacting based on the reactions and the realities of the experiences that you've had. And as much as it is uncomfortable, all that have experienced trauma are responsible. This is not to say that you are the reason for any of the afflictions that it may have encountered, but you are responsible in how you navigate. And oftentimes this is unacknowledged, unintegrated. And so we're experiencing life in a certain way. But if we say, this isn't the way I want to be, then we have the responsibility, which is a great, great joy and pleasure that we get to decide how we pivot in moving forward. Now, I want to share a little bit in regards to the performance of power. There was a time in my life when I thought I had to finally take my power back. You've probably have heard of this in a variety of social media where I'm taking my power back. Get your power back, girl. I had clear boundaries. I had a polished look and attitude. People were a little bit intimidated, and I liked that. It felt like I had graduated from being walked over. But when I got really deep into my progress and growth, this is a type of quiet that is when the soul speaks. And what I heard, because I finally was quiet enough to hear, I wasn't expecting. And that was, you're still performing. And it truly hit me hard because deep down inside, I wasn't at peace. This wasn't who I was. This was a version of what I thought was acceptable. And because I was being rewarded by certain behaviors, it makes you continue to do them. So let's just say that, having this boss bitch attitude is getting you, recognition at work. No one, you're not taking any crap and people are doing what you want. It incentivizes you to continue remaining that way. But in your core of core, you'll always feel this confliction because what you're doing and how you're behaving is very much contradictory to the true essence of who you are. Now, I'm not to say that there are not women out there who are just bossy and that is who they are. Like, that is core. But those women feel at peace with that behavior because that is who they are. But for many, it is a facade. It is a veneer. And with veneers, you're sawing down the core of you to plaster something else over it that seems to be most acceptable. And it was still the fact that I felt exhausted by being this way. I was still trying to calculate how I was being perceived, still trying to control outcomes, and very much hardening my heart to protect the version of me that I hadn't yet done the work to heal. And that was a real big moment for me to understand that the dark feminine isn't my highest self. She is the protector. She is the shadow, the shell. She is asking to be held, not worshipped. So I want to pivot us a bit into a different path. So how should you embody? You do not need to fight for your femininity. You do not need to have a femininity journey. Your highest self is going to be deeply magnetic without manipulation. What I see often in the femininity community, the soft life mixture, is, basically wanting to run game. I'm all about you running those man's pockets. That is always forever. But if you are able to be you, it makes things so much more fluid. You're not having to, be calculating, be grueling. You don't need boot camps on how to be feminine because it would be just what is. I have always believed, even as a young girl, that you have to copy off someone else's work and in what they do organically, you will always be behind because what is truly of them comes from source. And so they have that immediate download where you are having to observe and watch and take notes and therefore try to replicate what is coming through organically. Now, you can do the same thing if you tap in to who you are, your true essence, and you will be as magnetic as you are because it will come fluid and with less energy, most efficient. Your highest self is going to be deeply rooted in the truth without performance. This is something I see within the spiritual community as well, where it is this elaborate cosplay of being spiritual, or this elaborate play and portrayal of being feminine. And it's not, because if you really watch and observe, you'll see how callous and cold they are. But that again is because there is a wounded woman that needs to be healed. And that callousness is to protect. Your highest self is going to be very soft and sovereign. You see how those two together, soft and sovereign, they go together like perfectly. And there's going to be stillness and influentialness. What is doesn't have to act. It just is. It just stands. Like when you are speaking your truth, you are portraying yourself in your fullest, most unadulterated version of you. You don't have to do a bunch. It just is. Everyone's probably has encountered a woman that is that way. She just has a certain air about her, a certain bounce, and it has nothing to do with the physical, but she's just gorgeous. But it has nothing to do with the physical. The physical is really the least of the worries. It's just the essence. It is the signature that is. This isn't about swinging from being hyper feminine to be hyper independent. Like, I really want you to get that. There is no need to be on either end of the spectrum of the tiers. Like, you really need to stay in a balanced manner. It's about wholeness. It's about sitting with your wounds until they stop running the show. It's about building self-trust so that you no longer perform your power, you embody it. It's about choosing elegance, not because it's trendy, but because it aligns with your sacred dignity. If this episode stirred you deep within you, it means your soul is ready to evolve. I've created a guide, 4 enchanting steps to help you begin the sacred return to your most magnetic and feminine self. Inside, you'll get some daily rituals and some mindset shifts to begin to soften into your true essence. Not the performative kind of femininity, but the real, raw, radiant kind. I'll have the link in the show notes, and you can download that for free. And if this message spoke to your spirit, please send it to a woman you love. Let's dismantle performance together. Rise in a new way of being, soft, strong, and sacred. And until next time, stay mystique, stay rooted, and remember, your power doesn't need to be dark. It just needs to be true.